Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, all around this fragile blue planet, this is Dave once again from the Wolves Den studio with one of my favorite shows among many. It's called Through the Eyes of Equity with Michael McCracken and his guest tonight, our other beloved host, Andrew Bartzis. See, I almost said it right. We'll be back.
You said it right.
We'll be back in about 30 seconds or so, folks, so enjoy the music for that time.
All right. Andrew, I'm really glad you joined me tonight.
I'm due. We had a great little kitchen roundtable the other day. Great.
Yeah, we did. Man, what a day it's been.
What a day.
But it's
You're
all
telling
good. It's all good. Yeah, I was telling you the overdrive solenoid in my transmission. I believe that's what it is that went. And it's funny that happened. But when it happened, then I ran out of gas. I'm like, can you believe it? And the guy that picked me up was a mechanic.
That's synchronicity right there.
There you go. So yeah, so it's all going to be good.
Mm-hmm.
You know the crazy thing that I was thinking of whenever I was sitting there looking at the truck, I was thinking to myself, I don't even own this vehicle. The state owns this vehicle. So I'm thinking I'm going to get the repairs done, and then I'm going to send the bill to the state since they own it. That is what I am going to do. And
what representative of the state would you send it to? I mean, that's important.
I was thinking about that also. And,
Secretary of Treasurer?
Well, first I want to send it to the Secretary of State because the Secretary of State takes care of all the records, right?
Correct.
For the state.
It should have certification by another judge.
Yeah. I'm going to send it. Yeah. But I was also thinking, since it's insured, also send it to the Commissioner of the Department of Insurance.
Mm-hmm.
Just send a copy of this bill everywhere and see what happens and where it lands.
Imagine 10,000 people the same way you did and decided to use a mimic of that type of lettering and that type of wording to write all 50 states secretaries.
Well, when you think about it, we don't own anything, right? The state claims that we're just joint tenants, and there's no way for us to pay the bill off, and it's our signature that causes their commerce to happen. So I'm just going to put together a sweet little letter, sign it, and send it off and see what happens.
Would that letter have to be notarized?
That'd probably be a good idea to have it notarized and have the notary send it. Have the notary do all of this, all the mailings. All right.
Set it registered mail.
And have an apostille put right on it so that it gets put into their foreign jurisdiction. I mean, I've been thinking about all these. I've been thinking about all these different things. Last night on that show, I forget the host, but he had Paul Mitchell on.
Randy.
Yeah, Randy.
The guy from Supreme Law. Yeah, that was a great show.
Yeah, I've followed a bunch of his stuff for years, and he's pretty right on if you're in that at-law arena.
Right.
So many people get confused. It's just amazing how they've set this big lie up to confuse us all.
Right.
And, so when you think about it, how can they hold our feet to the fire for anything when they've never given us full disclosure on anything? And all they've done is commit. All they've done is commit one fraud after another. So really, when you think about it, if I'm a joint tenant here and they're taxing me, and only employees of the state and the federal government can be taxed. Well, where's all my checks? Where's my checks for the last 50 years from the federal and state government? Where's my checks?
Not in the mail.
You know, when you no, not in the mail. But when you start looking it over and start thinking it through, and you look at it and you're like, wow, these fellas have really pulled off the biggest scam in the history of the world. First they got all of us believing that we're United States citizens when we're not.
And there's two classes of citizens.
And actually 3, yeah. I mean, it's just really, really crazy the way that, and they expect us to follow them. Give me a break, you know. That's like Henry Sumner Maine. I used to sit there, and one of his quotes was that the letter of the law hasn't changed, but the way that you're dealt with by the law has changed. And I used to sit and read that and wonder, what in the heck is he saying? And that's whenever I discovered and realized that, you know, this equity stuff is how they did it. They took us out of equity, put us into this fake common law thing that they got going on. And this legal fiction that they've got going on, and that's how they did it. They've been lying to us all. And the biggest problem that I see, Andrew, is that we have no enforcement against them.
We have no recourse and no reciprocity. And reciprocity is written into the Constitution, and it's supposed to be through the checks and balances. I mean, there are so many people that are to the point of rebellion and revolution. Well, there's another way to think about it. Exactly like the preamble, when in the course of human events becomes necessary to be separate from a tyrannical government, our government isn't reached a tyrannical point. It is reaching... Well, tyranny is on a different level. There are people that will say the government has done me serious harm and has allowed corporations to run wild. Well, we voted those people in. It all comes down to Congress and Senate. Everybody wants to blame Obama. He's just a figurehead. The people that pass the law are Congress. Example, here's something that's to think about for your little bill to send to the state secretary. You know that you don't own anything. Well, you have a privilege to drive. That privilege is earned by what? Going through a driving class?
Mm-hmm.
None of those people are state certified. None of those people signed affidavits by judges. You know?
None of them. It's absolutely amazing the level of fraud that's being perpetrated against the American public. And what amazes me even more is we haven't gone and grabbed them by the scuff of the neck and taken them outside and given them a beat down, you know?
Well, we don't have a recourse to do that. And the Second Amendment right to bear arms is supposed to be that theory, but we have people that have evolved nonviolent protests. Nonviolent protest meets violent protests, violent opposition. You have dictatorships. The last time America hurt any of its own demonstrators was right after World War I, when they brought out the tanks and they ran over a bunch of World War I veterans that were demanding their pay.
Yeah, can you imagine?
Since that time, there hasn't been, other than a very small amount of like the Kent State shooting, where people were using powers they were sort of never meant to. It was proven that the governor and the people that called that up never had the actual proper right to do that.
Right.
And all of those people involved in that should have been charged with sedition and treason.
Yep. I was a kid when that happened, and I was a teenager when that happened. And I'll tell you what, that just, I mean, I was getting ready to graduate from high school and all that was going down. And, man, that just really was blowing everybody's minds.
It hamstrings the move.
But see, this is why I really believe, Andrew, that this thing that's getting ready to come and getting ready to happen, it's like today when I was at the gas station. The name of the gas station was Pump and Pantry, and there was a guy that is a federal game warden there, right? And this kid walks over and he's looking at the boat on the back of the truck and he goes, "So when do I get to go out in my boat?" and I'm like, "Yeah, tell him, kid." And the kid says, I just started paying taxes, and I wonder when I get to use a nice bass boat like this. And he had corn, the corn husks all around it as a duck blind.
Mm-hmm.
And the kid was like, "Yeah, I could use this for bass fishing, duck hunting." And I'm standing there, and the guy's laughing at him, And the kid says, "Well, what are you laughing at? Ain't I paying for this? How come I don't get to use it? If I'm paying for it, why are you the only one that gets to use it?" And I'm like, wow. It really blew my mind that this kid's standing there. And then the kid's dad comes out of the gas station and says, "Come on, son, we got to get going." And he says, "Well, wait a minute. I'm not getting an answer. I want to know why I can't use my boat."
Is it ain't your boat? You're a debtor.
and I told the kid, I go to the kid, I go, none of us own anything here, pal. Get used to it. And
you got fed the shit sandwich.
And he says, "Yeah, I'm learning that." And it kind of cracked me up because, whenever the kids, I'm talking, this kid was probably 17, 18-year-old kid, whenever they're seeing it, it's pretty apparent that it's all nothing but a bunch of BS,
right.
Sounds like Dave and Trimjar are having a computer.
Yahoo Messenger.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mute my mic. It's one of those days. Bye.
Okay.
A computer clinic going on over there.
When we started, you were saying that we don't own anything, and you wanted to send a bill. When you get pulled over by a police officer, there's a guy, I forgot the guy, JP had actually talked about it frequently, about giving a menu of bill of orders. Like if they ask you to get out the car, it charges them $500.
Oh yeah.
Well, the same thing can apply whenever a government agency, whatever it is, if you want to do that. If there were people out there that simply responded to everything in registered mail, you owe me $10,000 for giving me an order.
Exactly. And the great thing about this, Andrew, think about this, is that they're all private contractors, and right. So you're creating private contracts where do they have to be dealt with? Not in a court of law. They've right. created a private trust with you, so it has to be done in equity. And like At Rest says, equity requires clean hands. Yes, it does. And
who judges clean hands?
Yeah. Do they have clean hands with what they're doing to us? Think about it. They've lied to all of us and tricked us into believing something that isn't true. So how can we ever not have clean hands?
You can't.
We're just, we're just going along with what they're trying to tell us is true and right. And none of it's true, and none of it's right.
Right. I got a history question for you. What do you remember about being taught about the Civil War, specifically the Reconstruction Acts, in high school, as opposed to what you know about the truth of now?
Well, it's funny you say that, because I had a teacher in 9th grade. Her name was Miss Warr. W-A-R-R, Robin Warr. And she was a black lesbian, and she taught us a lot about it. She was so upset about how how we've been lied. She was just radical. She was so upset about how we've been lied to about everything. And I remember the principal coming in. He was listening outside of her class one day, and he come right in and he says, "Miss War, excuse yourself from the class right now and go to my office right now." And then he called the office, and he had somebody else, and we're like, "Wow, the teacher got sent to the office."
Yeah, that's some serious, something wrong there.
yeah, that was so. It kind of piqued all of our interest in what we were learning from her after that point, because she got called out and she got sent to the office, and she finished off the year there. But that was it for her for that year. But I thought it was pretty great, and we didn't learn. We learned about the carpetbaggers and all that stuff, but we didn't learn the real truth of the matter. We didn't learn the things that we had to take the time and learn and study on our own after. And think about it. A lot of us probably wouldn't have gotten that information if it wasn't for the internet.
Correct. And the people that were holding the flame before there was a online library and resources.
Right. I was making a comment about that a couple of weeks ago. Whenever you used to have to go up, like me, I used to go up to Syracuse University to Byrd Library, and I'd go in there and I'd spend hours and hours and hours looking at the books and reading and researching. And then I would have to go over to Rochester to Monroe County Law Library, and you'd run into all these different men and women that were, they were just fed up with. They had seen enough, and they'd been screwed over enough by the system that they had their own little fights. And then everybody would go out for coffee afterward and discuss the different things that they were finding out. And that was really a really good way to learn and study, because you had a bunch of people
sharing, exchanging.
And they're exchanging their court experiences. They're exchanging the ideas that they. It was really something. But now we have the internet. Now we listen to the different talk show hosts and the different radio stations on the internet. I know very few people that bother with the mainstream news at all anymore. I don't even know how they're staying in business with the
mainstream news. Always grabs a percentage of the asleep population, because I break the sleep population down to one that pays attention to world things, wants to know if there's murders in their neighborhood, so they watch the local news and part of the world news. Then you have the people that are sports-oriented and socializing and don't really care about whatever news is going on. And then you have the other third of the population are people like us that are awakened and are constantly researching and trying to connect to other people that are in the same mode.
Right. It's just amazing to me, Andrew, that what are they going to do? They're really when you think about it, the governments of the world, all of them are controlled by sociopaths and psychopaths.
Right.
What are they going to do as more and more people wake up and more people say they've had enough? It's not going to be pretty. They're losing their power. But see, here's the thing. Go ahead.
You were around in the 60s, and you were conscious enough to know really how big the marches were, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You were an adult. I wasn't. I was born in 74. I'm 38 years old now. I haven't seen that revolution in my own eyes. I've seen what they show in Greece. I've seen what they did in the Muslim territories through Tunisia, Egypt, and what they're doing now. I've seen a very small amount last year. And my generation, unless you go back to watch those anti-war videos, you don't really understand how different the world was then to what it was in the 80s, 90s, and then today.
Yeah.
Okay? Every city had millions of people in the street. That is when they were the most afraid. They're not that afraid now because there's not millions in the street marching yet. The sleeping dragon hasn't awoken and made signs and started marching and playing the drums.
Well, not just that, but think about it, Andrew. This time when this all comes down, I'm hoping that what happened in the late 60s doesn't happen again, where we had the race riots.
Right.
The race riots were, and it was just one more way that they were able to divide us. One more way where they were able to maintain control over us. I remember, whenever they were burning down downtown Syracuse and burning down their own houses,
Well, here in Cleveland, Ohio, for me, the Watts riot, they burned 3 miles of a giant neighborhood that was bustling and on the way out moving up.
Yeah, they burned it all down. I was amazed. I'm like, we're fighting the wrong thing here. And I don't remember who said it to me. Somebody somewhere said it to me. And I was down in Stone Harbor, New Jersey, and doing construction work over the course of the winter down in Stone Harbor and Avalon, New Jersey. Mm-hmm. And one of the guys was there, and we're up on this big-ass roof, and we're putting down a torch-down roof, and we're looking around, and one of the guys says, he says, we're all fighting the wrong thing. We all looked at him for a second. He says, black, yellow, white. He says, none of that matters. Red, none of that matters. Race, religion, none of that matters. He says, there's only green. You either got it or you don't. He says, it's all about economic segregation. You either have the money or you don't have the money.
Right. And if you strive to want to have more, they have a program for you to be a slave to.
And what ends up happening, look at all the guys that that have really built up a big bunch of cash. Then it gets to where they're not looking for the cash no more. Now they're going after the power. So it's all addictions. When you think about it, it's all a form of addiction. Instead of just living and enjoying the life that we have here, we're all addicted to so many things that it's crazy.
Right. Go ahead.
See, I'm looking forward to the day whenever all the guys that are in the militaries all across the world just hits them like a lightning bolt, and they just go, what in the hell are we doing? Why do I got to shoot that guy over there? That guy's never done anything to me. They just put down their guns and walk away.
That's a great thought. But let's play a hypothetical situation, and this only really works to people that are constantly awake and constantly looking around, such as you and me and many of the people in the chat room. What would it take for the military to signal to the media that we're coming? It would take a tremendous force inside the military, and because the military is in its own way is part of the enemy, because they're intertwined into the industrial way that money and military works. So there would have to be a coup d'etat. Okay, we've heard that term. Americans, the way the Bush Jr. says, America, don't want to see that. Why? Because it is the constant threat of tyranny. And earlier in the show, I kind of said we're not under tyranny just yet. They're giving all the police officers the weapons to be tyrannists, and the police officers are going to have to make a show. The firefighters are going to have to make a show. All those people that are a part of it. In the big thing during the Libyan war and in Syrian war, the people in the military that were part of the dictatorship were ordered to fire on the ambulances and the people bringing the wounded out.
Yep.
That's dictatorship. That's tyranny.
You know,
tyranny is one step away. Go ahead.
And when you see all these young fellas coming home, the young men and women are coming back from over there in the Middle East, fighting for someone else's contract,
right?
You know, fighting for someone else's constitution, because that constitution don't mean jack diddly to you or I. That Declaration of Independence now, that is where we ought to start putting our you know, that's where we ought to start spending a lot more time learning about the Declaration of Independence, learning about how it's a spendthrift trust, and learning how to operate within and through the spendthrift trust of the Declaration of Independence, because that is where we will get our freedom. That is where we will be able to get our equitable rights, is through that, not through the Constitution. The Constitution doesn't have anything to do with us.
Right. The Constitution has been subverted and subjugated by the rule of bar lawyers writing laws that they were never authorized to write.
That's right. Okay. And I still kind of... I was online looking to see if I can find that Paul Harvey thing that I was telling you about the other day whenever he did the thing on the Salem witch trials, because I really would like to be able to play that and let everybody hear about that. You know, just
hold on, I'll find it. I actually had it on my playlist. I went back and listened to it after the show.
The one on the Salem witch trials?
Yeah,
where they were burning the people at the stake because they were attorneys. That's what that whole thing was actually the beginning about. I tried finding it. I couldn't find it. But then I'm not as computer literate as you younger fellas.
I think it's on my other computer. Well, I'll find it here, like at the break or something, whenever we decide to go on break.
Yeah. But see, that's the thing.
I actually got a law military question for you. When you were studying, did you ever run across laws that were specifically designed for military repayments, military structuring, like the very first Department of War?
Oh yeah.
Which falls under the British military rule law.
Yeah, that's right. In fact, it was my dad that taught me that stuff. When I was a teenager, Vietnam was just ending, and he said to me, "These dummies, now we're going to have to go over there and rebuild that place." And I'm like, "What?" And he says, "Michael," he says, one of the very first rules of war, one of the very first laws of war is when you go over there and you tear them down, you got to spend your money to build them back up." And I'm like, wow. So then he started teaching me a lot about that stuff.
I forgot to say something at the beginning of the show. May I say it now?
Yes, you can say it whenever you like.
I would like to thank Revolution Radio for simulcasting us tonight. I forgot to mention that. And don't forget, folks, they have a donate button just like we do. And this weekend they're having a special midwinter marathon. And we're going to be on that station from 12 to 2 p.m. Eastern Time Sunday, which happens to be 9 to 11 time. 9 to 11 a.m. Pacific Time for Thomas Hughes and all that in a bag of chips, too, with his special guest. And on that note, I'm going to sit here and be quiet till the top of the hour.
Who's Thomas's special guest?
I forget, but he belongs to the LEAP organization or something like that.
Oh, okay.
All right.
The show that I want to hear
has good guests.
Yeah, he does. And, I'm really looking forward to the day when Thomas finally gets one of them big feet to be one of his special guests. I'll show up. I will.
Thomas technically did that already. He's talked in Bigfoot language before to one.
Did he?
He just hasn't done a long interview. Yeah, we should just tell him, break out the Bigfoot beer and have a talk with them. Say, y'all, get a load of this.
Yeah, I like Thomas. Thomas is a fun character. He's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that happens when you start getting involved in learning all these things that, like learning the law and the equity and learning the ecclesiastical law and this and that. And then it really does your sense of humor in, man. Because you start really thinking and you start really looking at everything as it's all one great big illusion. It's all one great big lie. And you turn into a grumpy Gus for a while. I mean, it's taken me a long time to just look at it and just laugh and go, man, how can people be so stupid as to believe this shit?
Hey, back in the 1820s, 1830s, 1840s, when people didn't have clean water, they drank grog. Grog is the hardest, nastiest alcohol you've ever had mixed with dirty, nasty water, and the alcohol cleans it. And you drink that all day long. Your average blood alcohol content's like 0.18. All day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. That's how they're able to fool a lot of people.
Yeah.
I'm dead serious about that, about the grog.
Well, yeah, but look at how, not just there, but look at how much rum that they would put on these ships, and they'd have these guys go out, and, I mean, they were drunk all the time.
All the time.
And now, I mean...
And loaded up on carbs.
Yeah. Well, I always said about the Irish, no wonder the people with Irish heritage, so many of them are alcoholics. Look at all the carbs that they had all the time just eating potatoes.
Exactly.
Those potatoes were just spiking their glycemic index through the roof, up, down, up, down, up.
Down. Right.
But see, the thing about the thing that really bothers me is how, when you look at all these wars, what did they really accomplish with these wars? The powers that be with these wars were able to get rid of the genetic, the people that had the genetic encoding to be the best and the brightest and the ones that would stand up against them. I mean, they're getting rid of those. They're getting rid of all the people that are genetically warriors. And once those genes are gone, what are we going to have? We're going to have a bunch of mushmelons out here that just won't stand up to them. And so that's how they're winning. They're getting us to fight in all these stupid wars that aren't doing us a bit of good.
It's making us more divided.
More divided, like this whole war on terror. I crack up whenever I heard that. And then whenever John McCain says, "Yeah, 100 years of war," I'm like, who wants to live through 100? How sick do you have to be to want to?
War of the Roses lasted 100 years. That was the last time you had a 100-year war.
Yeah,
was it 1712 to 1812? Something like that? 1700?
Something like that, yeah. But how sick do you have to be to set up a system where your children and your children's children are always going to be fighting, are always going to be, one enemy after another, after another, after another. That's why we're never going to get off this rock. Right now, we ought to have a civilization, a human civilization, not only on Mars, but we ought to have one out there on Pluto. We ought to have, you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. We should have, in the 20s, should have blossomed into science and never had World War I.
That's right. And World War
I was a way for them to ramp up the assembly lines and make factory workers, and then kill off the people that were not factory workers and breed new lines of factory workers.
That's right. And that's why, none of this is going to change until we make it change through our own self-determination. because that's how they do everything, through their own self-determination. That's how everything, and when I say they, I'm talking about the governments of the world, the bankers, the lawyers, all the people that have the power. They do everything through their own self-determination. Then they get into their little fraternities, and they get to be privy to all the little tricks of the trade that guys like you and I aren't privy to unless we get together with a bunch of other guys like you and I and spend hours and hours and hours figuring it out and learning it.
And then challenging those people in power to prove that they have the right to do that.
They don't have any rights. And that's going to be made way apparent to them soon. You know, that's what I like about guys like Greg Braden and Santos Bonacci and all those kind of guys that are bringing the truth out about who we really are. You know, I used to listen to Alex Jones, but I gotten to the point where I can't even stand his voice because it's all fear porn with
Correct.
that cat. He's not coming up with any solutions.
When it comes to listening to other hosts, when I've been a psychic reader for well over 12 years, and I've probably into reading 10,000 people, I know right away. I've listened to some of his shows, and some of his shows ring true because the controllers allow him to be true, because they will know he will simply fail as a person if he's not allowed to have moments of truth. It's like the steam release valve. The same thing is going on with the media, the mainstream news on-air media. You're seeing Fox News starting to break down seriously, as well as NBC News. They're letting things slip. But those people, for as much as people want to blame them, I have no doubt in my mind that Alex Jones is basically told, if you don't stay on the ranch, you will be humiliated and murdered, or worse, we will find a way to make the pain last so long that you'll feel it for 100 generations.
Yep. And that's what I loved about William Cooper. You know how they always, he was killed on the 5th of November and shot down in his doorway by a corrupt sheriff's department. And my cry on the 5th of November is remember the 5th of November, the day that William Cooper and the Truth was killed. They murdered him. They murdered him sure as Shinola.
Same thing goes for Bill Brockbrader. They just put him in jail, like you said the other day. He went in the wrong court.
Yep.
He's a martyr now. We have to make him that, though.
We have to make him a martyr. And that's what we have to do with every single person. Every single human being. Let's not say person, because that implicates a corporation. Every single
sentient human being.
That's right. Every single sentient human being, every single soul occupying a body, we have to make it so that whenever we see one of those fellas go down that's standing up for the truth and exposing the powers that be for their lies, turn them into martyrs. Name high schools after them. Name streets after them.
That's right.
Let them know that your game is up. Your game is up. And, everybody starts, I'm not going to say everybody, I hear so many people that start talking about the religious aspect of this. None of these earthly religions are right. Not a one of them. Show me one that's right. They all fall under the self.
That's the only one that'll ever be right.
They all fall under the Catholic Church, Andrew. Every single religion out there, through the 501c3 corporation, and ruled by they're ruled by the IRS and the Vatican. So guess what? They all fall under the Roman Catholic Church. So they're all telling you a different view of the same lie.
Religion has always been a business.
Always.
Always.
Always, always, always.
Okay. we learned from Duncan that when the church changed, it was actually Merlin that installed the church to bring a sense of balance.
Right.
If you are a believer in that type of spiritual energy and really understand what that meant, it was during the really dawn of the Dark Ages when there were chemical weapons being used here on Earthling from other people out here interfering, trying to take out whole sects of people that had genetic structures and then trying to move them to other areas so they could essentially spawn new races of humans under a controlled method. Particularly the Basque people in Upper Spain, who are genetically different than every one of us, they were very much picked upon, given plagues, sicknesses, all sorts of things. And the same thing goes to China, same thing goes to Indonesia, to Native America. They used smallpox on you guys. That was given from the interference people up there in specific ways that it would spread and go everywhere that they wanted to. Now, they cannot actually institute that without eliminating their own slaves that they want to have left. They're reached the point where their bluffing of brinksmanship is bluffing. Okay, there's many people that know that there's weapons out here that could end what we have. The darkness doesn't want to end this game. So if they end this game, they lose. Light wins. If darkness wins this game, it has an opportunity to go after the light of other parts of the universe and other parts of the galaxy or parts of the multiverse. We as the individuals stand at the precipice of choice. Choice to believe that you have choice in a false set of laws that is given to you from your birth and given you a number and a value to your life in dollars that don't exist, versus accepting spiritual and universal law in your rights. We as individuals need to express this on a massive scale so everybody gets to the vibe and understanding of what it means to have rights enabled to you by God and not by man.
Exactly. That's
the leap of faith.
That's exactly true, right there. That is exactly true. That is the leap of faith. And see, when you start studying equity, and I'm talking inherent equity, I'm not talking statutory equity, because that's one of their switches. They'll try to switch you in a courtroom to be under statutory equity, and once again, what are they doing to you? What they're doing to you is an operation at law, where when you go right from an equity through using the equity maxims, the maxims of equity and a court of conscience, that's where we need to be. And the more that I personally sit there and read and learn this stuff, and the more I understand it, more I comprehend it, it just gets to the point where it's like, whoa. I mean, I see where it's all the things that are bad out there that are involved in my life. I've caused them all. And through equity is the only way that I can get forgiveness. Mm-hmm.
The other day, hold on. I'm sorry. On the other day, you read the definition of equity. I don't know if you have your dictionary near. It was really good when you read it, because it gives such a frame that you can jump off on, because there's so much in that definition you read.
Well, when you look at that definition, and you apply it to every aspect of your life, just that definition, it's like, holy mackerels. Every single thing that is in every single part of your life, every Every event in your life that's an interaction with another person is a trust. Every single one of them.
Exactly. It's a trust.
And we've been so fooled into believing all these other things that aren't true that just end up wasting our time and rotting our brain and throwing us further in confusion, that whenever you start looking at things, like I say, through the eyes of equity, holy moly, you know, like if you in equity, if you're lying, you got to straighten out your lies, and it will come out. If you're frauding, it's going. You got to straighten it out, and it will come out. Let's just take a look at that. Let's read that one more time. Now, this is out of the Black's 4th edition that I have sitting here. This particular one was published by West Publishing in 1968, revised 4th edition by the publisher's editorial staff. Equity, in its broadest and most general signification. This term denotes the spirit and the habit of fairness, justness, and right, dealing which would regulate the intercourse of men with men. The rule of doing to all others as we desire them to do to us, or, as it is expressed by Justinian, to live honestly, to harm nobody, to render every man his due. It is therefore the synonym of natural right of justice, but in this sense its obligation is ethical rather than jural, and its discussion belongs to the sphere of morals. It is grounded in the precepts of conscience, not in any sanction of positive law.
Great
That's
definition.
A thing.
Mm-hmm.
Equity is a body of jurisprudence or field of jurisdiction, differing in its origin, theory, and methods from the common law. Mm-hmm. See, the common law came from equity.
Mm-hmm. Equity existed before there was history.
Right. And then it further goes on to say, it is a body of rules existing by the side of the original civil law, founded on distinct principles, and claiming incidentally to supersede the civil law in virtue of a superior sanity inherent in those principles. Sanctity inherent in those principles. And that's what it's all about. It's not about the forms that you use or the procedures or this. It's what's right and what's wrong. If you're doing right, then if you have clean hands, if you're operating from a standpoint of good faith with clean hands, in equity, you'll always win. But see, they don't deal with us that way. And when you see, I had a traffic case that I was doing where I had some traffic tickets against me back in 1992. And so I figured, I'm going to use some of this stuff. You know, I was mixing everything. Just back in them days, we were just trying to figure out how the hell we can get to court and win and not just be run over and treated like cannon fodder.
Right.
So I included that into my legal papers, and then at the end of my legal papers, I put, I also put in the penal law of the state of New York, and I attached the cover sheet from the book on the penal code, and the judge says, "What are you asking of me?" And I says, "I'm asking for equity." And he just looked at me and he dismissed everything. And they were just some crazy traffic tickets.
Just click, bang, dismissed, next.
Yep. I says I'm asking. I says I'm asking to do this in equity. I didn't know what I was saying, or I didn't even realize what I was doing then. I just did
what
it.
you were requesting.
Something just told me to say what I said. I said I'm praying for relief in equity, and he looked.
Imagine
at me
if every. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Imagine if every protester in the United States was armed with that information when they were arrested and then taken to court to be charged with something. Imagine if there was an app every person could have that would say, this is what you say because you're being charged with this in this city as a protester. Imagine if there was an app that everyone could share. Every protester can say, I have the power of the law in my hand and I will not let a false government in power take away my rights.
Yep. Now think about this. Now they can't ask you any questions unless you have an attorney, right?
Correct. And they're asking you questions when they're arresting you. You ever known a cop that's never not asking you questions?
Not one single one. And this is what I've been thinking. I'm sitting here thinking about this last night after you and I were done speaking. I'm sitting there thinking, holy mackerels, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say or do shall be used against you in a court of law. So I'm sitting there thinking, when they ask you for anything, where's my attorney? I demand an attorney be present. Don't I have the right to... You see, when they ask us questions, we're trying to be polite and positive, and do what we think is the right thing, what we were taught was the right thing. We were taught the wrong things. When they ask you a question, shouldn't the very first thing out of your mouth is, where's my attorney? Where's my attorney? Well, you're not under arrest. Well, good, then I'm going to go. Have a nice day. Right there, that ends it, doesn't it?
It does, but a cop's not going to do that.
No. So, think about it, though. Whenever they take you in front of a judge, the judge asks you, what's your name? Where's my attorney?
Letters or small letters, exactly. Where's your attorney?
Where's my attorney? And what's he doing whenever he's doing that? He's trying to turn the document into the beneficiary and you into the trustee. He's trying to turn the state into the beneficiary and you into the trustee through a constructive trust. Where when they ask you a question, if you were to, especially if they're hauling your ass in there for arraignment, then just, where's my attorney? Mm-hmm. No matter what he said, where's my attorney? Where's my attorney? Mm-hmm. Isn't there supposed to be an attorney? Where's my counsel? Aren't I guaranteed the right to counsel? Where's my counsel? Mm-hmm. If
you know that most of the big cities that you could protest now, they don't have to bring you your counsel for up to 15 days now. If they want to hold you, they'll hold you in contempt before you're basically the police officer is holding you in contempt, and the officer can't. That's the theory behind it. Then they create these special laws that only apply to certain streets because they know it's the main thoroughfare protesters are going to go. If you were to give advice to anybody that's going to be a protester this upcoming year, what information would you want when you say it doesn't matter how you get arrested? You know you're going to go in front of you're in New York, you know that, or in New Jersey, and you're going to one of their criminal courts and you're being charged with, let's say, not disturbing the peace. It'd be some kind of weird law that would have to do with anti-protesting law. You know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. You're on a street after 4 p.m. without a license issued by the state because there's more than 7 people meeting there with signs. That's the law they're charging you against. Mm-hmm. What court would you, as a defending protester, want to be in? Not an at-law court. You want to be in equity. How do you get in equity as a protester?
Well, see, if you read that book that I've posted, Gibson's book on equity, and it'll tell you how to get into an inherent equity jurisdiction. It lays it all right out. It's a 1,200-page book, but if you get in, once you read through it and you get back towards the back, it tells you how to
tells you the procedure list to attempt.
No, not to attempt to do. But the very first thing that we have to do is see. None of us think about this. None of us have qualified our signatures. None of us have expressed our trust. First off, none of us have qualified our signatures. I'm not going to say none because that's a lot. Most of us haven't qualified our signatures. Most of us haven't established our position within the trust. And if everything's a trust, well then, wouldn't it make sense to learn this? It takes a lot to learn this. It takes some studying to learn this.
Right.
But it's a lot easier than you think. So, wouldn't it be more advantageous to learn equity and know your true substantive rights, so that, because they can't violate them once you establish them.
Right. That's why I came up with the concept that there was a cell phone app that could bring reminders of what it is to be in equity when you deal with the courts. Because protesting, for it to blossom and flourish and to see the 60s and the 70s rise again with this generation of people and to throw off the yoke of control, you need people to revolt and know that they have something that's based on the old version of the Constitution that meant we were all equal and citizens, and not the bullshit sandwich they've served us.
Right.
Okay? In the 60s, they said jail, no bail, and that worked. That really did. There is a new way. There is an updated way to do jail, no bail. Equity. Don't charge me in this bullshit court. If all the cops know that somebody has been training protesters in equity, guess what? Those cops inherently are going to know that they're going to get charged with felonies.
Well, see, it's even deeper than that. They're private. Whenever they come after you in your private capacity, and you respond in kind in their private capacity, and start taking, and the judge will have to give you the equitable relief, and you start taking all their little toys away from them.
Right.
I mean, in equity, you can even take their wife. Did you know that?
Yeah.
I mean,
in equity, you can achieve balance.
Yeah,
what it takes for balance is even eye for an eye if it needs to be.
Yeah, I'm not saying to go out and because I mean I wouldn't want to end up with a bunch of I'm not even going to say that, but you know what I'm saying, right?
I know what you're saying. You don't want to see that. You don't want to see that far end.
Yeah, but what I am saying is that that by learning, see, it breaks down to real easy. We've never done government. We the people. We, the common man. We've always let everybody else do government. And when we let somebody else do government for us, look at what we get.
Right.
It's not a very pretty thing. So, by establishing and expressing our trust, the trust is already there. The Declaration of Independence. I don't know when the last time you read it was, but that Declaration of Independence is a spendthrift trust. Mm-hmm. And that's the document that we should be learning about and learning how to operate within. The Constitution, the free sovereign, a harem of unhappy females. Yeah, that's what it would be, free. Oh, man. But that's where we should be, where I'm not going to say we. I'm going to say that's where I'm concentrating my efforts, because I can't tell other people what to do.
Right. You know? But you can show them your theory.
I know it's not going to happen for us in the common law. Mm-hmm. That's already been
What was before common law?
The equity. The equity came through the Roman civil law.
Okay. Which also came from the Greek law.
That's right.
The Greek law came from the Code of Hammurabi.
That's right. And that came from where? From Egypt. Where then Egypt. From where before that? It came from
Sumner.
Sumner, Samaria.
Yeah.
So this should tell us that equity, being the oldest inherent equity, where your rights are given to you by God, they're your substantive rights. This is the playground we should be looking, the arena that we should be going in and standing up in. The hell with all their man-made laws.
When they took telepathic communication from us is when the laws broke down, because the laws were meant for the race to be telepathic and you couldn't lie. And once they had that pulled over your eyes, they won.
Well, let's take a look at this, okay? Here we have natural equity in the same Black's Law Dictionary. A term sometimes employed in works on jurisprudence, possessing no very precise meaning, but used as equivalent to justice, honesty, or morality in business relations, or man's innate sense of right dealing and fair play. Inasmuch as equity, as now administered, is a complex system of rules, doctrines, and precedents, and possesses within the range of its own fixed principles, but little more elasticity than the law. The term natural equity may be understood to denote, in a general way, that which strikes the ordinary conscience and sense of justice as being fair, right, and equitable, in advance of the question whether the technical jurisprudence of the Chancery Courts would so regard it.
May I break in for a moment?
Sure.
It's break time.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, we've just been going and going. It's been fun.
And it's time once again to thank Revolution Radio for simulcasting tonight, and to thank all the listeners and chatters on both websites. We're grateful that you're here. We're going to take a little break. We'll be right back in about 5 minutes. We are back, ladies and gentlemen, and I apologize because the other two gentlemen are still on a break. But I just want to say thank you for everyone that... I got to quit looking at the chat room. I just want to say thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. This is another very special, informative show, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. And once again, I'd like to say thank you, Rev Radio, for all you do for Wolf Spirit Radio. I'm very appreciative of Mike and his whole crew over there. And I'm appreciative of every one of my hosts and their guests. And my appreciation goes so deep that I really have trouble finding words to express my appreciation. And I have appreciation for everyone who donates to the cause for Wolf Spirit Radio and Rev Radio. Because without you, we can't grow. And by golly, we're going to continue to grow till hell freezes over. And then we're going to go ice skating. They took a break a little bit late, so I'm going to sit here and talk and tell you just what I'm doing. I'm building a new website. We're making a lot of changes. We're going to make some scheduling changes for when people have their shows. We're going to make the schedule where it's a lot easier to read on the new website.
All right, I'm back.
Well, it's about time. I'm sitting here talking to the people because I can.
Hey, well, how are things going for you now?
I'm doing okay, Andrew. I really am. I mean, it was hard this morning. It was difficult this afternoon when we buried Taylor, but I know she's with Herc and Sassy and Bubba, or not Bubba, but Buddy, and her mother and father, the wolf mother and father. She's with the lady that I got her from. And they're talking, and they're partying, and they're having a good time because she's with them. And I'm grateful for the time that I had with my beloved Wolf Taylor.
And you're in our prayers, and so is Taylor, Dave.
I know, and I appreciate it. Anyways, is Michael back yet?
Yes, I am.
Well, why don't you two go on for another whatever, and I'll come back in about time 55 and tell you once again, thanks for Revolution Radio, because that's about the time they go to break. But I'll pay attention and won't let you guys run over next time. But you can take as long as you need tonight.
Oh, okay. I was sitting here, Andrew, and I'm looking through one of the legal papers that I wrote. Back on one of these. I always had problems with traffic tickets. Of course, living in New York, you know how easy that is.
Right. It's a scam up there.
Oh yeah, it is. But I wrote this. Let me read this to you. You'll like this. I, Michael McCracken, completely ignorant of what is going on in this matter, object. I'm a prisoner and hostage, constrained, restrained, abducted, kidnapped, held prisoner and hostage against my will, without my consent, under duress and coercion to commissions, omissions, acts, and non-acts perpetrated upon information and belief by person and parties, alleged public servants, officers of the court, law, officers, officials, agents of the state, county and municipal corporations, all allegedly under commission, contract, and oath, with full knowledge, sworn and affirmed, submitting themselves to all responsibility and obligations of the respective office occupied, and the full liability for all commissions, omissions, acts, and non-acts perpetrated on or against the masters they serve. These self-same alleged public servants, all under commission, contract, and oath, with full knowledge, sworn and affirmed, are fully knowledgeable that prisoner and hostage McCracken is fully authorized and certified by the penal law of the state of New York to be in full possession of all property designated, described, and defined therein, and in full possession of all state and federal law, rules, and regulations pertaining to the preservation, guarantee, and security of property, at least but not limited to, persist on making demands for performance based upon information and belief, all alleged judicial paper, incomplete documents, alleged judicial devices, holding McCracken a prisoner and hostage to alleged judicial paper, bills of pains and penalties, writs of assistance disguised as alleged summons disguised as an alleged order, at least but not limited to, upon information believed, forged instruments based on perjured testimony, fraudulent acts of compulsion, constituting unlawful imprisonment, conversion, mail fraud, consent judgment, certified and registered confessions, at least but not limited to, these confessions, omissions, acts, and non-acts, are the work of, upon information and belief, tortfeasors, principals, and co-defendants disguised as alleged public servants, launching attacks on the property rights, property contracts, property due process, property thing in action, property policy, at least but not limited to, of prisoner and hostage McCracken, while sworn and affirmed under commission, contract, and oath, with full knowledge to preserve, secure, and defend such property from assaults of willful, wanton, malicious, malice, and forethought, culpable criminal negligence, at least but not limited to. Therefore, I, McCracken, a prisoner and hostage to these commissions, omissions, acts, and non-acts, and to willful, wanton, malicious, malice, and aforethought, culpable criminal negligence by alleged public servants under commission, contract, and oath, with full knowledge, having left their first estate, abandoned all their protections as the custodians of the administration and supervision of prisoner and hostage McCracken's property, abandoned all immunity secured under the 11th Amendment of the Bill of Rights while attacking the 9th and 10th Amendments, at least but not limited to having attacked, overrun, by evasion, by trespass, seized, occupied public buildings and facilities for personal aggrandizement, profit and gain, subjecting the person and property of McCracken to de facto demands for submission and confession, de facto appearance, de facto demands and performance, de facto process, de facto authority, de facto trials, with no contractual authority, no jurisdiction, subject matter or personal, to entertain alleged demands and threats of reprisal and dismissal. And therefore, I, McCracken, do hereby and herein read the penal law of the State of New York into the evidence of this matter, pursuant to the attestation of the Speaker of the Assembly and temporary presiding officer of the State of the Legislature of the State of New York, to writ, all persons and parties, tortfeasors, principals, co-defendants, take and also take notice that prisoner and hostage McCracken makes the strongest objection possible to all proceedings, process, and appearance in this matter. And then I signed it. Oh.
That's law poetry, guy. That's law poetry.
And then I also put, and also read into the evidence in this matter, at least but not limited to, the United Supreme Court, Erie Railroad versus Tompkins, 304 U.S. 6458 S.C.T., Supreme Court 817, 1938, where the court ruled the law of the state is the law of the case, and there is no federal common law. United States Supreme Court decision Ex parte Young, Ansinger versus Hamlin, Maribocha versus U.S., Colville versus Bennett, and Title 18, Section 241 and 242, the Good Faith Doctrine, the Clean Hands Doctrine, and all state and federal law, rules, and regulations pertaining to the protection, preservation, security, and guarantee of property, property rights, property contracts, property due process, at least but not limited to any and all privileges and immunities enumerated therein. They handed me back my driver's license and told me to go home.
How many tickets have you beat?
Oh man, dozens. All different ways too. That's
all because you decided to take law serious and say, I'm not going to let you fool me on these secrets. And you grew and blossomed into a person that knows a lot about law.
Well, I'll tell you, whenever I read that to the judge, because they took my driver's license, man, I couldn't get back and forth to work. They took it.
You need to post that brief on the Wolf Spirit website so people can go and read that and really take time to understand some of those words. I mean, that's law poetry. That's really law poetry.
You know, and the judge asked me, when I read that to him, and he had a copy up on his bench that he didn't want to read. You know, he flipped it over when I handed it to him, and I called it my oral statement. Mm-hmm. Because one of the things that I found out was they got to let you make an oral statement, right?
Right.
So that was my oral statement, even though I had it in writing. And I read that, and like the judge, man, he started squirming on the bench. And the cop,
his hemorrhoids were going tight on him.
Yeah, and the cop that had my driver's license, because he kept him, he didn't give him to the court. I mean, he ran up to that bench and tossed that driver's license up on the bench, and the judge picked it up and he looked at it and he said, Mr. McCracken, approach the bench and reclaim your property. This case is dismissed. And he hit the gavel, and I'm like, I didn't get a chance to say anything, you know. So I just walked up and grabbed my driver's license.
I have one thing more to say. The call-in number is 1-775-657-5973. Again, that's 775-657-5973. And thank you, gentlemen.
I know there's a lot of people on Revolution Radio that are protest people and are part of Occupy Wall Street. If you guys really want to empower yourself, find somebody in your group that wants to know about how to go into an equity court instead of this little city court that they're going to charge you stupid protest laws under. Go ahead, Michael.
Thank you. No, you know what we really need to do, Andrew? We really need to start putting together study groups.
Right.
Because let's face it, these Occupy movements that they have going on, those are all backed by the powers that be. They just want to get us to. They're wanting to take our eyes off of the goal.
There's good people in them, though. There's still good people in them.
There's a lot of good people in them, but they're misled.
Right. And they need to have information. They need to have the information that shows them what's the lie and what's not.
Well, it's like the last traffic ticket. I got a traffic ticket for talking on a cell phone right before I left New York. And so I showed up on the day of court, and they called my name, and I jumped up and yelled, "Ready!" The judge looked at me and says, "What?" I said, "Ready." He goes, "Ready for what?" "Ready." And then he says, "Well, what are you ready for?" I said, "I'm ready to fight. Isn't this a fight? Isn't a courtroom I'm ready to fight. Who's here ready to fight?" And he looks at me and he goes, "Oh, you want to fight, do you?" And I go, "Well, that's what you got me down here for, isn't it?" I says, "But before we fight, Judge, I demand to see the paperwork on the QSIP number and the QSIP account for this case. And I want to see your oath and the bond for this court and in this city, in the state of New York." He just looked at me and he hit the gavel and said, "You're dismissed." And I'm like, I didn't even get a chance, you know. But see, I was shooting one across the bow whenever I asked for the QSIP number of the case, and for their bond and for his oath. He knew I was ready. I was ready to go forward. Now he didn't know whether I knew for sure what I was talking about or not. Although I did. So he was like, "No, ain't opening this can of worm." And people were looking at me like, "What the hell just happened?" You know. But when I jumped up and yelled, "Ready!"
Well, imagine if 1,000 people were arrested and they all had that same defense. How would a judge have to respond to that? His first nine people brought in front of those New York night courts, where they rush them through.
You know, because he asked me for my name, and he said they called my name, and then he asked me for my name, and I didn't say my name. I just yelled, "Ready." "What's your name?" "Ready. I'm ready. Ready." And he's like, "Ready? Ready for what?" "Ready for a fight."
Once you acknowledge your name, you're part of the court.
Yeah.
You don't want to play in their rules.
I never acknowledged my name. I just said, "Ready for a fight." "Ready. I'm ready." But before we go any further, I want to see this. And that kind of blew his mind. Because it was a $250 fine, he would have been able to cut. You know, the $250 fine plus $85 court costs that would have went into his retirement fund. Let him kiss my butt. You know, it's like it's getting to the point where they can kiss my butt in Dave Brothers' window, because everything that I know they're doing is a lie. And once you start realizing just how big the lie has grown, think about, is it going to be able to stand? Is the lie of the at-law fiction, the at-law legal fiction, going to be able to stand the truth and justness of equity?
It can't.
Of your substantive rights given by God, not by man, but by God. God gave me these rights.
Right.
And
that's the spiritual leap of faith.
Yeah.
It's not about the God itself. It's about that you have been given these rights granted to you by whatever it is that you believe in.
And see, I feel one of the best things that can happen out of our use of the internet is for people to get involved in little study groups and start finding out people that live close by you and start studying together and start learning together, because it makes it easier to learn when you're doing it together as a group. Because that way, you know, there might be some days I don't feel like learning. I don't feel like studying. I don't feel like doing. But Andrew will, or Tremjar will, or Free Sovereign will, or one of the other people. So it will help us all to grow and to get better and to get stronger and stronger and stronger. And then guess what? Once you pull that curtain back so many times, that guy behind the curtain back there, whacking his Jones, sooner or later, he's not going to be there. Because he's been proven to be a fraud. And if enough people learn how to establish their substantive rights by establishing their expressed trust documents, by establishing their position within the trust, by qualifying their signatures, by knowing who they are, remembering who we are, is the power that we truly have. When enough of us do that, then the lie that's been perpetrated against us all will crumble.
Mm-hmm.
The facade will be blown away, and you'll see that on the other side of that facade, there's nothing but hellfire and damnation and desert. That there's nothing there. And that's where we're at. We're in one of the best times. We're alive at one of the best times in the history of the world to be alive. Because we get to be part of this great moment of change. We get to participate in this. We get to be in the numbers of the sentient beings that incarnated here at this time to turn this around so that mankind will have a chance to become what mankind was created to become.
Mm-hmm.
And we were created. What's that?
We're meant to be creator beings.
That's right. We weren't created to be slaves. And I don't believe I came from no damn monkey either.
Right.
You know? I'm not.
When I started getting open to the original Akashic records, I came to a historical memory and number of past lives that understood that Earth's initial purpose was to be the water nursery to the universe here. It was the place where all the life was being generated because all the skillful souls decided to come here and to become an agrarian-based society and to procreate plant life on a massive scale so that it can be put onto planets and moons and spread across the world. And then it went through its natural change, just like there are seasons in the planets, like, winter and summer and so forth. There's also seasons in the galaxy. Earth went into a wintering season, went to a frost cycle, and then as it reborn back through, the battle began on the far side of this cycle, 56,000 years ago. There are people that say it goes back to 150,000. It does, because for so long, our sentient species has been subverted its choice and its ability to understand the law of equity. 100,000 years ago, much of the population was telepathic, and therefore equity made perfect sense because it was very hard to lie to people that were accredited to be those that could detect the lie. We don't have that in our society. People like that are frowned on, but there are people out there that know when they're being lied to. You know what I'm talking about.
I sure do. I witness it all the time.
Right? Now, there are people that believe lies because of ignorance. That is the interference that is outside of this world. It is to control the creator outcome here. They've done whatever it is they've done to get here, so because they've tried to control everything up into this moment. When we realize we're creator beings, it's because we're part of the original water nursery of the life of this universe. We were the spark. And the people are coming back into that spark because we are going out of the galactic winter into the galactic spring. And it is a great awakening coming, but it does take time to go through, just like the changing of the season.
Yep. Just like, think about it. Whenever you're used as the instrument to help somebody with a Reiki session, it's not an immediate, hey, I'm better. It takes days after that, after all these things have been put in place, and it takes time. That's like all these, I hear all these different fellas that were these naysayers on 2012 saying, oh, this is going to happen and that's going to happen. And I've listened to, I can't say all of them, but I've listened to the vast majority of them. And you know what? I'm really of the belief that this is going to be such a great, and we've been here before. Many times.
4 times. 4 times, actually.
That's right. We've been here at least 4 times prior to this. And
this is the 5th.
Each time it's changed a little more. And see, this time I'm in the same frame of mind on this as Santos Bonacci, that they're not going to be able to stop it this time. They are not. I don't care if they come and they shoot me tonight, or if they shoot everybody that's, if they do away with everybody that's thinking the same way that us fellas are thinking. They're not going to be able to do away with us all, and it's not going to stop it. This time is the time that this world is going to change in such a way that we're going to have such a positive outcome.